Okay.
Great. Can you see my slides?
Yep, we can still see your slides.
Perfect. Perfect. So you ready, Matt?
Yep.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for uh, participating today in our community live program, and especially with the weather being what it is and being nice to just curl up today on a couch with a good book. I appreciate your listening to this talk. What I want to talk about today with you is the importance of cognitive and social stimulation. What I'm going to cover in this presentation is, first of all, why it's important that we remain cognitively and socially stimulated, why it helps with protecting our brain from normal cognitive aging changes that occur, but also from mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease and related disorders. And then I'm going to discuss some of the approaches there are to cognitive rehabilitation. For example, some computer games you may be familiar with that you may see advertised or that you may even subscribe to. And also tell you a little bit about what we do in the Cognitive Empowerment Program for cognitive rehabilitation. So the first question I want to pose is whether or not there's evidence that engaging in cognitively stimulating activities is beneficial for brain health. Are there evidence-based studies showing that it makes a difference that we keep our minds active and constantly challenged and engaged? And the resounding evidence states that yes, there is definitely evidence that this is important for brain health. There have been a number of different studies that have come out, and one of these was in 2002. It was really a groundbreaking study by Robert Wilson and his colleagues at Chicago Medical School. It was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And what these investigators did was they had about 800 older Catholic nuns, priests, and brothers who did not have any dementia when they were enrolled in the study. And they recruited them from 40 groups across the United States. They followed these participants, the investigators followed these participants annually. And at baseline, when they were first put into the study, they asked people how much time they typically spent engaged in certain common activities that involved thinking, that involved information processing. So they asked them things like, how much time do you spend viewing TV, listening to the radio, reading newspapers, reading magazines, reading books, playing games such as cards, checkers, crosswords, or other puzzles, and going to museums. So at entry into the study, the participants rated on a 5-point scale how often they typically engaged in these activities, from either 5 being very often, every day, or about every day, going down to 4, 3, 2, or 1 once a year or less. And for viewing television and listening to the radio, they were asked to estimate their average daily hours doing these tasks. This is what they found, that the risk, and remember, these people did not have Alzheimer's or any dementia when they entered the study. So they were followed annually over many years. Some of them did go on to develop dementia and Alzheimer's. They found that the risk of developing Alzheimer's decreased by 33% for each 1-point increase. So the more frequently someone rated how often they were engaged in these activities, the less likely they were to develop Alzheimer's over time. And they also found that for people, compared to people who had very little engagement, said they rarely did these activities, a person who moderately engaged in these activities had a 28% reduced risk of developing Alzheimer's, and someone who very highly engaged in these activities had a 47% reduced risk of developing Alzheimer's over time. This was really dramatic. I mean, this had not been shown before. This was a non-pharmacological study, no drugs involved, just looking at the risk of engaging in cognitively stimulating activities. It was really blew the field open because we've not thought about this as mattering that much previously. So then the important question became, does it matter whether or not you engage in cognitive activity later in life? So when we're young, we may go to college, we're probably very active socially, cognitively. But as we get older, let's say we've never done anything when we were young, we were kind of inactive, we just kind of did our job, came home, sat and watched stimulating kinds of TV shows, and we never did anything. What if we started doing these things later in life? Did it make a difference even if we started later? And they found that it did make a difference. So it's never too late, is the bottom line. Again, the same investigators in 2013 published a study in Neurology, which is a very prestigious journal in our field. It's peer reviewed and it really goes through intense review. They had cognitively normal people, 55 years and older, who they rated their own current activities and also what they did when they were young. And the investigators gave them cognitive performance tests. Some of you have come into our clinics and have gotten neuropsychological testing. Well, they had 19 different tests that these people were asked to complete annually. Again, similar to the other study I showed you, people were asked to rate the typical amount of time that they spent in these activities involving information processing. Again, watching TV, listening to the radio, reading, playing games, cognitively challenging games, going to museums, activities like that. And again, they were asked to rate on a 5-point scale, with 5 being the most frequent, almost every day, to once a year or less. So they had a rating of how often, how much they engaged in these activities. It's a little bit complex, but let's look at the top graph here. This shows early life, how people rated what they did early in life. People in the green line basically were people who said they engaged when they were young, very often in these activities, compared to somebody who very rarely engaged in the activities shown with the red line. The green people in the green, very frequent, or blue, moderately engaged in these activities, had a much slower rate of cognitive decline over many years. But what was really important was that the same thing was found from people rating how often they did these things currently. Those who said they did these very often, the green line people, had a much slower rate of cognitive decline in the later years than the blue people, people who said moderate activity, versus those in the red line, very infrequently engaged in any activities. What was also really striking about this study, remember I've told you these people, many of them didn't have any cognitive impairment when they entered the study, but it turned out there were a subgroup of people who had mild cognitive impairment when they entered the study. They found the same kind of finding, that even when you had mild cognitive impairment, engaging in activities that were stimulating, even later on in life, were protective against further decline, or at least slowed down the amount of decline compared to people with mild cognitive impairment who basically didn't do any of these activities. So why does it matter? Why does it matter that we engage, that we keep our minds active, not only when we're young, but currently? Well, there's this hypothesis, and it's been shown in a number of different studies now, looking at the brains of people who have passed, that cognitive activity somehow helps to delay functional decline, despite the fact that brain changes are taking place. So if you look here, this line shows you down here AD pathology. And you can see that, let's pretend that you're an individual with Alzheimer's, changes going on in your brain, and the AD pathology is increasing over time. So the plaques and tangles are building up in your brain as you get more advanced, older. Well, someone with low cognitive reserve, meaning that they're cognitively unstimulated, they don't do a whole lot, doesn't have a lot of reserve, what we call cognitive reserve. So as the brain neuropathology builds up in their brain, they reach a point where they quickly show a decline in their functioning. But someone who has a lot of high reserve, meaning they have a neuroprotective factor, can also be building up brain AD pathology, but it takes them longer to show changes. So they go along longer in time, even though at the bottom the pathology is building, and it takes longer for them to show any signs of decline in their functioning. So this is the cognitive reserve hypothesis that take two individuals, one with low reserve, one with high reserve. The person with high cognitive reserve has more pathology in their brain, but yet cannot show changes as quickly as someone with less reserve. So, what do we mean by being cognitively stimulated? Well, basically, when we talk about cognitive stimulation, we're referring to mentally engaging activities that challenge a person's ability to think. And the important point here is the idea of having to learn something new. So, in order to be cognitively stimulating, the task that you take on should be new. It should be something that challenges you. Taking a cooking, art, or computer class, joining a book club or forming a book club, reading about new things, taking on a new physical activity. Maybe some of you have taken piano lessons when you were younger. Well, maybe you gave that up. I certainly did when I was young. I wanted to do other things, and it's a big regret of mine now, but it's never too late to relearn to play the piano and to even learn more challenging pieces now. Learning a new language. I took French as a child, but there may be some other languages that I don't know, like Spanish, which is such an important language now to be familiar with, or even taking French up again, but taking some harder classes would be something that might be cognitively stimulating. The important thing here again is the idea that it has to be challenging. So to get your brain geared up and revved up, you need to do something that's important, challenging to you. But again, the idea too is that something be fun. So if you're not interested in something and you're just taking it because you think it's good for your brain, chances are you're not going to stick with it. So what's encouraged too is to take up something that you really are interested in and want to learn more about. COVID has had a tremendous impact. And actually, I've heard this from numerous patients, and we hear this a lot at the cognitive empowerment program that COVID has had an impact on reducing the ability of people to be cognitively stimulated. One reason is because, classes, adult education classes, have been canceled during COVID, but now that we're resuming, there are a lot of community programs that have community education. Emory is one of them. We have a tremendous uh, continuing education curriculum here. It's the OSHA Lifelong Learning Institute. It's called OLLI for short, OLLI. And you can look it up online by going to Emory and just plugging in even OLLI. I'm not sure if it's started up yet, but it does offer courses. They're given over at Executive Park Building 6. They're very inexpensive. They're typically a couple of weeks or they may last 4 weeks. They meet weekly. They're very affordable. This is just some examples I got from their curriculum before COVID. Um, you could see they have some really great courses. They're usually taught by retired Emory professors come in and teach these classes, but there are other people in the community with expertise who come in. They do, mindfulness meditation. They had a class on Chaucer, Canterbury Tales. They had a history course on the Civil War. Again, they had a dance course, gentle yoga. They had, retirement success, yoga for the 21st century, just a bunch of different fun things. They had a wine course they gave, French. They even had a Woody Allen course on themes about his different movies and discussion with other people, estate planning, Spanish writing for health. So this is just one example of continuing education classes that are available. Others as well, just by Googling and seeing what may be in your area that you might find interesting. The other nice thing about these classes is you get to meet other people who are also interested in what you're interested in and can form friendships and activities outside of class. So they're really awesome for stimulation. The other thing that's really important, then that again, COVID has impacted, but now that we're seeing the light and things are opening up again, the importance of social engagement can't be emphasized enough. Social engagement is also being studied as neuroprotective. And again, a lot of studies are showing its benefits. Here are just some examples of social engagement and activities that people can do now that COVID is ending a bit. Even on Zoom, engaging with others is beneficial. Volunteer activities, getting a part-time job, joining committees, visiting friends, eating out, other things like that are also neuroprotective. So studies, again, I wanted to emphasize the social engagement piece. It's not just cognitive stimulation, but there's studies now showing that social engagement is also beneficial. Studies have found that they've done brain scans of people and have found that those who are more socially engaged have thicker or larger brain volumes. They have more connections between different parts of the brain, including regions such as the temporal lobes that are important for memory. Social engagement is also neuroprotective because it can prevent the onset of depression. When we're socially engaged with other people, we're less likely to be depressed. And I know I'm bringing up COVID again, but there are studies that have come out showing how high the prevalence of depression has been during COVID. And one of the reasons has been the social isolation. So the more we become socially engaged, the less depressed we would become, and therefore the sharper that we become as well. And also, social engagement may promote a healthier lifestyle. The more we're engaged with other people, the more we may eat, out, the more healthier. Maybe we do more meal preparation with others, have people over. So we're more likely to be engaged in a healthier lifestyle as well. This is just a site. There are many others that you can Google. This was something I found on the NIH that talked about a federal website that you can go to. It talks about volunteer activities in state parks and other areas that you can join. Gives you ideas. What's cool about this is you can put in your region. You can put in, if you're from Atlanta or your zip code, and it will come up with activities in your specific area. There's also, of course, the ARP Foundation has loads of great ideas for participating in activities. They, talk about mentoring and tutoring kids and helping them with homework, being a role model for kids. Senior Corp, involving nonprofit organizations, again, doing different volunteer activities, both secular and faith-based activities that you can do as well. And I wanted to turn to something that people often ask about cognitive training, whether or not this is beneficial to engage in these online programs. I'm sure many of you get advertisements or emails from different companies trying to get you to sign up for cognitive activities. So when we talk about cognitive training, what we're really talking about are programs that utilize practice or cognitively challenging tasks. So there are very many advantages to doing these types of online programs. First of all, they have very nice graphics. They're very visually appealing. So they're kind of fun to do. And also, many of them adapt to your difficulty levels. So you may start out doing a particular task, like face name, learning a face name association at a very easy level. But then as you get better, the tasks become more and more difficult. So they really challenge you, and they get more adapted to how you're doing on the particular task. These have been used in people, these tests have been used across people with normal cognition, mild cognitive impairment, and even with people who have Alzheimer's disease. And the first study was actually in 2007, investigating the efficacy of cognitive training in people with mild cognitive impairment. This particular trial compared a computerized program with medication versus just doing medication alone without the computerized training. And they found, and the training consisted of techniques such as divided attention, focusing on two different things, speed of attention, processing speed, and also going over some different memory techniques. And they found that the group that was exposed to both medication and computerized training had an increase in memory, decreased in depression, and a decrease in behavioral disturbances compared to a group that just had medication alone. So this got the field really excited that, hey, this may be a great strategy for people who are experiencing MCI or mild cognitive impairment. So you've seen some of these programs, I'm sure. Lumosity is probably one that you've gotten some emails about or seen advertised, and also Posit Science. Posit Science is something that we use in the cognitive empowerment program. It's developed out of California. And the reason that we choose Posit Science is because there's some evidence-based studies behind it. It's been used in some clinical trials across the country, and it does show a few benefits on cognitive functioning. Now, Lumosity got in a lot of trouble because they said that they were able to sharpen performance in everyday life and protect against cognitive decline. And they were sued and forced to pay $2 million because of this, for deceptive advertising. No brain training program should tell you that they can protect against decline or improve you or prevent you from getting Alzheimer's disease. Those claims are not valid, and it's really sensationalist advertising to say that. What they can do, however, is they can somewhat sharpen some of your abilities, like Brain HQ or Posit Science. We sit down with people in our program, and they do different exercises in different areas. There are some memory tasks that they do, attentional measures, people skills like remembering names of people, hearing a name and then later being able to recall it. These are some of the people skills that are taught. Remembering how to remember someone's name, for example, is some of the different strategies they try to work with you on. So there's some evidence for Posit Science that it can improve speed of processing. So some of their attentional measures emphasize quick responding speed, and there has been some evidence that it can help with speed of processing in older drivers and thereby reduce driving cessation. So there has been some research showing that. And there's also been some research showing that people who are exposed to it do have some increased activation in certain brain regions like the hippocampus memory again, and the frontal lobes and their parietal lobes. But I do think that's what really is important, is that these can place demands on attention, and they can enhance social stimulation if played in groups. So some of the brain stimulation programs, like have, for example, playing tennis against other people. They're kind of cool because you not only compete with other people, but you also get that social stimulation, but you also get the physical exercise and just the skill at, where to place the ball and just scoring, things like that. So exergaming is called, has been found to be somewhat beneficial. But I have to really do a disclaimer that the evidence is really mixed about how much these computer games really help. First of all, the studies have had pretty small numbers of people, so it's not clear how you know uh, powerful the programs really are, and also whether they're generalizable, because just because you're sitting in front of a computer playing a game does not necessarily translate to the real world and how you'll do when faced with meeting somebody for the first time and trying to remember their names and faces. So the programs don't necessarily teach you a strategy. They just give you more, exposure and practice at this type of thing, but not necessarily the skills for helping you to strategize how to remember a face and a name. So, computer based cognitive training should be considered a possible tool to help, but it needs to be used in combination with other interventions such as yoga, exercise, diet, other healthy lifestyle choices, and not as an end all and be all for helping your thinking abilities improve. At the cognitive empowerment program, what I've been talking about right now in terms of some of these computerized training programs is they're aimed at trying to rebuild the parts of the brain that aren't functioning as well as they should be, like the temporal lobe, the frontal lobe, things that are affected in people with, as we get older, memory, and also in mild cognitive impairment. But what we are also doing at the Cognitive Empowerment Program is something called compensation. So our techniques there, we're trying to go outside of trying to focus on repairing the brain itself, but coming up with strategies that go around the brain and compensate for the loss that has occurred. And we engage in certain therapist-based training in which we teach people strategies for getting around, for example, some of the memory loss they may be experiencing. Something that we've done and that's been really successful, not only in the cognitive empowerment program, but over many years during my career at Emory, has been calendar notebook training. We have been working with people trying to encourage them to use a notebook calendar system. The most amazing or most realistic way for not forgetting something really is to write it down and to keep it organized in one place, not to have sticky notes all over with things to do, notes on the refrigerator, notes in your office, notes in your kitchen, but to have an organized way that you write things down, appointments, things you want to do, things you want to remember in one place that you can refer to throughout the day. So we're trying to teach people to use an organization and tracking tool and incorporate this into their daily life. This is an example of the calendar that we have. It's very small. It fits into a purse, into someone's shirt pocket, back pocket. Some of our folks have actually gotten on Amazon and ordered lanyards to, because it has a binder to wear it around the house. We've had people order passport holders where they could carry it with them when they leave the house. But it basically is a strategy for recording appointments and scheduled events, items to be done today, and also a journal of things to remember. And this is a true example. Back in 2013, when I had a talk to give in New Orleans, I had written in my calendar that I had an 8 o'clock presentation for our Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. I wrote down too, at 5 o'clock, my Delta flight was leaving at 5:45 back to Atlanta. And on the right-hand side, I wrote down things to remember to do, to bring my slides to my talk in the morning, and also to confirm my flight back to Atlanta. And then I made a note to myself of where I had parked my car, that I had parked my car at Park and Ride in row 5C. So this is just an example of how the calendar can be used just to facilitate everyday functioning and to be used as a memory aid, not trying to repair the brain itself, but to go around some of the issues that people may be experiencing in organizing and remembering things by writing things down and keeping a calendar notebook system. We encourage people to get in the habit of using the calendar notebook every day, referring to it at least 3 times a day, if not more, several times a day. And also, we call it insurance. We teach it while people are in mild cognitive impairment stage as insurance. If things should change down the road, you've already established the methods and the habit of using the notebook calendar system, so you don't have to learn to use it later on in life. And finally, be an informed consumer. Again, there are a lot of advertisements out there, Prevagen, lots of different claims out there about things that can cure or prevent decline. Be informed. You can get on something called PubMed, PubMed, on Google. Just Google in PubMed. You'll come up with a site. You can then Google a word you're interested in, Prevagen, Lumosity, anything that you're particularly interested in. And articles will come up that are peer reviewed, meaning they've all been looked at by experts in the field before they got published. And vetted, so that you can read it for yourself. How are these things? What's the opinion about them? What are there papers on these things that seem to support their usefulness? And again, have fun. Again, if you're not interested in learning something, but you think it's good for you to learn chess, don't bother with it. I mean, you're not going to keep it up. You're not going to have fun. And that's probably the most important thing for ensuring that you stick with something and really, benefit from it. So those are the two caveats that I'd like to end with. And I do have time for questions if anybody's interested, and anything that I can answer for you guys. And thank you again for your attention on what's seeming to start to thunder out here and get
Yeah.
darker. So I
Well,
appreciate it. It's very dark out. Yeah.
yeah, and thank you again, Dr. Goldstein, is because one thing that I really liked about your talk is that you really like hit at like the heart of the cognitive empowerment program, I think, especially like that, especially the first half we were talking about just getting people engaged. I mean, I think like that's like really important to like our study is like we're engaging on all fronts. We're engaging people physically, we're engaging people cognitively, we're engaging people socially. So if anyone is not already involved with the research study and any of that sound appealing to you, then please like continue to like get in contact with us or get in contact with the cognitive clinic to get a referral, because that's kind of like the heart of like the project. One other thing is that, so for people that don't know me, I'm also the one of the technology specialists on the team, and I was like kind of giving like a little technology little tip. So one other thing I wanted to add as because one thing that when I've talked to people is I hear a lot about like, well, how do I find these people? Like I want to like do these activities, but how do I find people? Well, that is one benefit of the internet. And so like two recommendations that I would have is if you are on Facebook, not everyone is, but if you are, is that there's a lot of like Facebook groups that you can find like in your local area that do things. And another thing is that if Facebook isn't if you're not on Facebook, there's also another website called meetup.com. That's meetup.com. And that is like a place where you can put in any sort of like topic that you're interested in. So as example, if you're interested in walking or gardening or something like that, you'll be able to find groups of people where it's like, hey, we're gonna go for a run. We're gonna meet up here and we're gonna go from a run to here to here, or we're gonna walk from here to here, or we're gonna bike from there. Or I mean, it doesn't have to be physical activities. It could be. I actually met some close friends of mine where I there was a group where it was like, hey, people are gonna meet at this bar and play board games, and like that's how I met some of my friends. So that's a newer way of trying to expand your social net and trying to meet new people.
The other thing too, Matt, Zoom, I didn't use Zoom before COVID, and now there's just so many groups that you can even get online with,
Yeah,
and discussion groups, book clubs. Just there's just so much, even if you don't leave your house and you
yeah,
just want to get meet people through the internet, there's just great opportunities now. I think everybody realizes the power of Zoom and other social networks on computers. So
yeah.
yeah.
And thank you for reminding me of that, because a lot of the places that I just mentioned, like Facebook or meetup.com, is that a lot of them now have like moved virtual. So it was like we used to do this, but now we're going to do it virtual, and there's like a link that you can join and everything like that. So yeah, so a lot of those resources now are online. So yeah,
Mhm.
thank you
Yep.
for reminding me. So now I'm taking a look at some questions. Everyone is thankful for the good information. Yeah, if anyone has any questions about increasing your cognitive engagement or some of like the cognitive training that Dr. Goldstein was talking about, please post them in chat or in the Q&A section. Um, I don't see any other questions, but yeah, I just want to reiterate again is that if anyone is not already involved with CEP and this talk was interesting, please get in touch with us. I did post the links down in chat on the phone number and the website to talk to our cognitive clinic about getting an appointment, talking to a clinician about getting into our study, and some other things. For people that have been coming week to week, is that last week's talk should be finishing processing on YouTube, and that will be up soon. So someone asked, are crossword puzzles and other games on the New York Times useful?
Absolutely. I personally, they're hard. Those are awesome. Sudoku, some of those, name games you could get, in those little books at the grocery store. Yeah, I think all of that's really challenging and fun if you enjoy crossword puzzles for sure.
And also combining some of the things that we were saying is that like if you're really interested in crossword puzzles, I'm sure you could find some other people that really love crossword puzzles just like you. So now you're getting like a social thing, like a social activity, and you're doing like a cognitively challenging activity
Yeah.
and you're learning something new. So that would be like another tip I would have. Okay. Well,
And another thing, you guys probably know about the healthy aging study at Emory. That's an online thing that you do. You fill out questionnaires and things like that. And the nice thing about healthy aging is it's all done online, but it's possible that you might be selected at some point if you're interested in a study. So it's another way to become engaged in research. So you could just go to the Emory website, emory.edu, and just put in Emory Healthy Aging Study, and you can sign up online, and you'll fill out questionnaires each year. And then investigators at Emory, when they're looking for research participants, put in certain criteria, and if you fit that, they would then get in touch with you potentially and see if you're interested. That's another way to get involved.
Yeah, and I think like that's another point, and that's something that I've really learned on working on this study is that there have been so many people that have come into our program where I've talked to them and they'd be like, oh, like I'm so excited for this person to join the study because I met them on another research study and now we've become friends outside.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think, yeah, getting involved with like any type of like research can be both. I mean, it's really helpful for researchers and scientists and the whole community, but it's also can be like a great like social experience of meeting other people. I've been blown away on how many people I have met that have said they have met some of their best friends through research studies in the area. Yeah. Okay. Well, oh, we got another question. Are there studies linking alcohol use with mild cognitive impairment or neuroprotection?
Well, definitely, alcohol has, of course, is a risk factor for cognitive impairment, but it's excessive alcohol, not, moderate's okay. But excessive alcohol has been linked to like alcoholic dementia or other types of dementia. Um, it's certainly not, well, red wine. Some people, there have been some studies also showing that red wine can be neuroprotective. Again, though, everything has to be done in moderation. One of our neurologists says nobody with cognitive impairment should drink. Another one says it's okay to have a glass of wine. So it really varies by provider, but I would say moderation is the key,
Yeah.
you know.
Also, for just an expansion of that topic, last week's video was with Margot, our nutritionist, and she also touched on that topic. So that video is going to be processing soon. So please check out our YouTube channel if you weren't here last week. And she kind of talks about, so Margot is our nutritionist on the team, and she talks about the mind diet, which is kind of it's kind of like the Mediterranean diet, and I forget what the other thing. It's called the DASH diet. It's kind of like things that are good for your heart is also good for your brain. And there, yeah, like Dr. Goldstein was saying, is that
Yeah.
she also talks about that there's some research that a little bit of red wine in moderation can possibly be helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
And sleep is being asked about its effects, and it is the hottest topic right now, that research area. In fact, we are working with cognitive empowerment program is working with Georgia Tech to come up with a some monitoring devices in people's homes to monitor the sleep and big risk factor, lack of sleep, for cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease. So it's very, very important. And, if you suspect, or your spouse, for example, tells you snore a lot, or you're falling asleep easily while in the car, or things that suggest you might have sleep apnea, very important to get a sleep evaluation, because it's a modifiable risk factor for cognitive impairment. Some things we can't modify, such as, gender, genetics, things at age, advanced age, but things like improving our sleep and treating sleep disorders, something we can do something about. And it's critical for ensuring good cognition. So absolutely huge right now, huge area of research.
so we also had a few other questions, and so we had a question and a comment, and I find this interesting too. So they said that Lumosity has a long-term record of a participant's progress. It can be challenging, concerning, and depressing. Can an organization like yours indicate the potentially unanticipated results to the management of Lumosity? So I'm pretty sure what the question was getting at is that after you do Lumosity for a while, you're able to like see an overview of your progress,
Mhm.
and that it can be concerning if especially if you see it going down. So um I think there's two things. One, Dr. Goldstein, do you want to explain like kind of like how the cognitive team kind of work with our members on interpreting and understanding the tests and results? And then also, do you have any tips on um you know working with this information that may be negative, that like maybe like your scores are starting to dip? Do you have any tips on kind of working through that?
Yeah, we work with when we were in the space, we work with people. We have a library set up with computers, and we actually go around and work with people on the different programs. Some of them are very difficult and hard to understand. Even the instructions are difficult, and they're not for everybody. Some people just are not great at remembering face names. So that may be something that we decide after looking at your performance, and especially if it's not fun anymore and it's frustrating, we might say, hey, this isn't, beneficial to you. So we try to work with you and pick the modules that are going to really be, we think, fun, but also beneficial to you. And you're right, they do give you, it's nice. Even Brain HQ gives you a record of how you're doing over time. That can be very rewarding when you see your progress, but it could also be frustrating when you see that, you're not getting better on something. We sit down with you and talk about that and decide whether that's something to even be concerned about, and let's move on to something else. So it really is done individually. Um, and some it's true of anything. It's not just of the computers games, but some people, like me, for example, I tried to learn bridge a few times now. I can't play bridge. And I could take 9 million courses and I just don't get it. I don't understand it. So I finally said, you know what? Bridge isn't a good thing for me to be trying to learn. Same thing with the computer games. Some of them may not be uh, the best fit for you. So we'll work with you on that, not to worry about that. But you'll
No.
also see progress too on
And
some things.
and to highlight one of the things that you said is that we're not just giving people like a readout of like here are your scores, is that like you have within our study is that there's a whole cognition team that you guys discuss it and everything like that, and like you lean on their expertise. I think that might be difficult if you're not part of the study, you're just doing lumosity or something by yourself, and it's just up to you to interpret these things as you will, which I think can definitely be difficult. That this person also had a follow-up question, um, and do we do we have any involvement working with Brain HQ recommending changes to the software, changes to the games, or anything else like that? Other
No, we don't. We don't have any, and that's an important disclaimer that, we have no commercial interest in Brain HQ or anything like that. So we don't have any input um, with the company about how to do things differently, or they, at some point they may ask our opinion. They haven't yet, but we'd be glad to provide them with feedback, but there's no connection with them.
And then they also had just one other follow-up question, is that they were just asking like a professional influence on the scoring. They do have clinicians and other neuropsychologists or neuroscientists that work on their team. So
Exactly. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. University of California at San Francisco is one of the centers that develops these tests. Um, but again, if you go to PubMed, you might want to Google it, and you'll come up with some of the studies that have been published using it. So you can read about it and see how it's been used in other outcome studies.
Yeah, well, okay, we're coming up on 4 o'clock. If anyone has any more questions, please post them in chat or in Q&A. Otherwise, we'll end a little bit early. I want to thank everyone for coming today. I know the weather is picking up a little bit
Yeah,
more here
thank you.
again.
Thanks for your
So
attention. Thanks.
yeah, thank you for your attention, and everyone stay safe and dry out there. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. And thank you guys all for coming. I'll keep this link open just for a few more minutes in case you have any last minute questions. But thank you guys all for coming this week.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.